Welcome to the latest episode of Making Sense.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Making Sense, the podcast where we don't always make sense. My name is Teresa.
I'm Erica.
And this is Keelan.
And we are so excited to give you guys another another YouTube video of our podcast, Making Sense, the podcast. As you guys know, we have decided to not only do audio format, but we have transitioned and putting ourselves on YouTube. So today we have a lot of really cool topics to talk about. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to get started.
Yeah, I loved our last YouTube video and how fun it was. I will say this time I'm at my house still because I have something I have to do later for work. But I like this new platform because it's like we're in a real studio type thing.
It definitely feels like that, I guess.
You know how like when you watch like a news segment and you have the one person over here and then the one person here and then they're talking?
Yes.
That's what I feel. I feel like this is a news interview and you guys are the news anchors. And yeah. I'm the
Although you're one of the anchors too.
Well, yeah, I'm an anchor, but I'm a separate anchor.
Erica is silliness. No, that's fair though. We've done where we've like Skype before, but you guys couldn't see us. So this has been really interesting. If you watched the last video that we did, all of us were just like, we look so good. We look amazing. We look great.
My skin is great.
Oh, Keelan is glowing. I'm looking at him right now. I'm like, baby, look at that gloss.
Yeah, you're right, baby. Oh.
Old.
Baby oil.
Oh, baby oil. I thought you said baby oil.
It's not oil.
And I was like, you're only 30. How are you? That's not old.
Oh my goodness.
Oh. I thought I said old. No.
Yes. Well, you guys want to go ahead and let's jump on into what we're talking about today. We have a couple of things. The first one being, as many of you know, the passing of the Queen. Yes. And we're not talking about Beyonce or Queen Latifah. We're talking about the Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth.
Yes. So she died last week, 2 weeks ago. I can't remember. But she died.
Erica.
I don't know about any of y'all. I wasn't super into the Queen stuff, except for when there was tea and drama with Meghan Markle and Henry.
Okay.
Like then I was like, oh, let me get in on this tea. I know some of the stuff, like, I mean, Kate Middleton and Prince William. And at first I thought William was becoming the new king.
No. So did I. I thought
he's not because he's her grandson. And so Charles, William's dad, is the new king.
Right. Yes. So with the whole Queen, you know, the whole situation, I, like you, Erica, I only paid attention to when it dealt with something like scandalous or, you know, going back, flashbacks. So a couple of things. Oh, my bad. A couple of things that I thought were interesting with the Queen's death. Number one, you know, our condolences to the royal family, to the entire country, because we understand, like, you know, she is a staple, she is a monarch, and to them this is extremely serious, even though we don't understand the severity of having a figurehead as that such. You know, to them, we do understand that even some of their schools were shut down for up to 2 weeks because of the Queen's death. But a couple things. Number one, notice that, you know, Prince Harry and Prince William, when I'm assuming, you know, there are so many ceremonies. So I don't know, like, if this was like the official funeral or whatever it was, or was it, you know, a memorial service or whatever. But, you know, one of them was dressed in just like a plain suit and not able to wear the royal garments because he had denounced being part of the royal family so that him and Meghan Markle could go and live here in the United States and all that stuff. So I was listening to that scandalous stuff, and I was just like, I mean, that's his grandma. Like, he's still part of the royal family. Every time you think about him, every time you see him, you associate him with the royal family, not with just being whoever. to my favorite one. My mouth started watering because the tea was just so good. They had showed this old interview, and I actually watched it again this morning. They showed this old interview with Princess Diana when she was talking about the affair. What's their dad's name?
Charles.
King Charles. Now.
Charles, yeah.
King Charles.
King Charles. And Camilla. And they were like, can you believe that he cheated on his wife with Camilla? Cheated on Princess Diana with Camilla. And then they were like showing like pictures of her back then, Princess Diana back then, and Camilla back then. I'm just like, man, your taste buds and your eye for women were all out of whack during that time. Because she was not the cutest.
I mean, I will say this. It's been the believe the side chicks TikToks for me. They say you can do it, side chicks. And I said, y'all need to stop. They said, this is your hero. And I said, they said she was going to be the queen no matter what. And I said, the marriage didn't work out. She ended up going back with Charles. She is the queen now.
Well, see, that's the thing. She's not. I was reading that too.
She's
so technically, she is considered.
She's not the queen.
She's not the queen. She's called the queen consort.
Oh,
okay. She is not she cannot get the throne. The next one, which one married Meghan? See, I don't even.
It's Harry.
Harry married Meghan. Okay, so William is the one that's going bald headed, right?
Yes.
So he ain't got no hair. So the one ain't got no hair. William, he will be technically the next one in line.
Yes.
And then all of his kids.
And then his children.
Yes.
And then would have been Harry, but he renounced, so now I don't think.
Yeah.
But even then, I think
the whole line.
If his kids,
I mean, his daddy. I mean, not his daddy, but his brother. If his brother became king and was like, "Hey, I want to give you your royal title back," you can, because King Charles just gave his brother after the mama. The mama stripped that man of everything, all his title was, like his positions and stuff. And then now everybody's kind of in an uproar because King Charles gave it all back to him.
Right.
That was like one of the first things that he did. So
I mean, he could. But here's my question: if William becomes king and his kids have kids, do his kids go in front of where Harry would have been?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless all of them were to pass.
Ooh,
which
God
let's
forbid.
not. God forbid.
Yeah,
Sorry,
no.
I shouldn't even have said that.
Yeah.
That's
what happened to.
Then it would be Harry. But everybody, as long as they keep having children, those children will always be in front of Harry, unless something.
Have y'all watched House of Dragon?
Of course, I watch House of Dragon.
Okay.
Oh, you need to watch.
Keelan said no. So there's this meme going around of like the progression of who the next kings are going to be, and they have Daemon Targaryen at the end, and everybody's like, he'll get his spot at one point, and I'm like, oh my gosh, honestly. After this is over, I need to text you about it because wild.
Oh,
and I don't know how I feel.
I just can't. House of Dragons, and then the newest, what is it called? Is it the Fellowship of the Ring?
Rings of Power.
Rings of Power. So those two shows are going to be great.
I know.
House of Dragons. You didn't watch last week's episode?
Oh, I did, and I don't know how
everybody
I feel.
Listening right now, we have went from the Queen to House of Dragons to Rings of Power.
But it all connects.
It all connects because somebody in each one of these scenarios is not going to get to become king or queen.
Yes. And George R.R. Martin is a historian, and he kind of based some of his stuff within like English history.
Yeah, I need to get your.
We're not going to get into the family dynamics.
We're not going to get spoilers.
I'm into the family dynamics. I'm into the family. I just want all the secrets to come out. There's a couple other things that, I was watching the news today, and they were just reminiscing on things that the Queen has done that has been unorthodox of her in the past. So, she was queen for 70 years, 71 years?
I think so.
Something like that, yeah.
Like
70 years, 71. She was 96. So, she was sitting there. She was, She was born when Jesus was around. So, what?
I love you so much. Keep going.
I mean, she was. She was Jesus' Sunday school teacher. And so when they were talking about, dignitaries that the Queen has, or presidents or political leaders that the Queen has brought to the royal home, and for state dinners or whatever it may be, and there has only been one individual that has been invited after they were a state, country leader or whatever, and that has been Barack Obama. He is the only dignitary that she brought after he was no longer in, I'm not going to say in the United States in power, but in the role of sitting president, because she considered him to be full of dignity, courage, and he had the utmost respect, she said, for the crown, and she said she appreciated that, and seeing a humble man who understands the state of severity of the nation and the international stage. So they had this little picture, and he actually shared it. I believe it was on Twitter, or it could have been on Facebook because I follow him on both. And he wrote this long message, and it was the last picture they took together, sitting at dinner, like him hunched over to her, like laughing, and her laughing back, which a lot of people says it like breaks down like the role of Her Majesty, because it shows that even though there's certain things that she does in certain ways that she has to act in public, she became more, even though we know she's human, but she became more human when with him. But this also leads me to the next question. Okay. So I hear top secretly that typically some people believe the Queen has been dead for a couple of weeks and they're just now announcing it. Do y'all believe that?
I love me a good conspiracy theory.
I kind of believe that, because I've heard that before. Like, there's supposed to be a certain plan that should the Queen die, like this is what we do, this is how we act, and or it comes out like this, all news stations will stop broadcasting, and it happened that way. But like typically they say, there's this belief that they have to have everything in line before they
I mean, I definitely could see that, especially because they are such a big presence in that country. So I could definitely see them being like, we need to let the family know, the family getting like their grief out, and then proceeding forward, because this is like, if it was the next day, I don't know if I would like be mentally stable enough to be like, let me walk down the street for my grandma.
Because my question is like, how was everybody in Britain at that time? Once it was announced and all that stuff, like all the royal family, like, you go out, you have all these speaking engagements, like you're visiting state leaders and stuff like that. You're always doing something politically, political. Even Harry and Meghan, like, they still have speaking engagements and stuff like that. Just because they're not per se part of the royal family, like they're still oftentimes acting on behalf of the royal family. So like everybody happened to be there the very next day after the news was announced. I understand like you can get flights and stuff like that, just like that, but like,
well, my thought is two things. One, were they kind of prepared that it was going to happen, and then maybe everybody flew out to be with her during those last moments, and then they were there? Or I'm also like, partially I feel like, it could happen, like it happened a while ago, but then at the same time, I feel like in today's society, there's so much, we got to leak this story, that I don't feel they could keep the secret for that long without somebody paying off TMZ to tell or something. I don't know if they have TMZ there, but
I feel like they got a whole different system in place that we don't even.
It's possible because in the United States, nothing's a secret, but over in England, they could have all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Making good sense on Making Sense. Let's get back to making sense with Making Sense, if that makes any sense.
All right. Well, I love to talk about the Queen, but I know that there's a couple other things that we wanted to kind of like talk about today. And while we're talking about politics and just like political structures, something that's interesting that we have like started to think about is what are some things that make us consider a political candidate or someone that we would vote for, as well as we want to get into like talking about infrastructures, architectural design, and how it plays a role in our society.
Yeah, so a little backstory. I was working this fair. I'm not going to say where. I'm not going to say any identifying information. But I was working a fair, and at the fair, there were 2 political candidates there. Don't know what they're running for. Don't know what their names are. It's like a small little local election. And at the fair, one of the candidates came to every single tent and like talked to each person. The other candidate didn't. And then when we were watching, there's these like picnic tables, and an umbrella fell over at this one picnic table. And the one candidate walked right past it, didn't pick it up. But then the other candidate stopped, picked it up, got it like set up right, whatever. Because it was like a community picnic table, not their particular picnic table. And then me and Hannah were like, man, if I was voting in this election, I feel like the one person gave me more reasons as to why I would vote for them, because they were more approachable to us. They came and talked to us. Even when we said, oh, we don't live here, they still like were talking to us and weren't like, just like, oh, well, never mind, I'm done with your time. But then also the fact that they picked up the stuff, and that just made me think, what causes you to want to vote for somebody other than their beliefs or like political beliefs about like certain policies? Like that aside, what kind of humanistic, moral types of behaviors and values do you want somebody to have?
Well, if we're thinking in terms of political science, which Erica, me and you both have degrees in political science, we have to think about how politicians appeal to us. Typically, they're often trying to appeal at some type of emotion. That's where this idea of political psychology comes into play. So they're trying to appeal to an emotion to see, what chord can I strike with an individual in order to get them to understand that I'm the perfect candidate for whatever, election, local, state, whatever. When you look at like what you're talking about, whatever fair you were at, and whichever candidate came around to each booth, we call that grassroots campaigning. Okay. Grassroots means you're on the ground, you're sitting there and you're trying to, you have to understand, we as people, we have to understand that in the realm of politics, the area that affects us the most is politics at the local level, because that has the most daily impact in our lives, from property taxes to citations and stuff like that. So the fact that he or she, I don't know, I'm assuming that he took the time to come to each booth and talk to you all personally, even after you and Hannah said that y'all didn't live in, the area in which the fair was happening. The fact that he took the time meant that he not only, I feel, because again, this is appealing to the emotion, I feel that he or she is not only just trying to talk to you about the issues or just to convene with you, but to also understand you as an individual, because politicians have to understand that we as people, we're human, so we're unpredictable, things. And again, you double majored in psychology, so that people are unpredictable, in that we can change in the blink of an eye. So sometimes you have to make those humanistic connections. You have to get that one-on-one FaceTime, just to let people know, hey, this is me, these are the things I believe, this is my demeanor. Also, let me give you a chance to feel you out, because one thing that we talk about in psychology and sociology is that when you're interacting with somebody, like for guys, we typically are just right here. We're the eyes only. But for women, we see that women look you up and down, and they analyze every bit and piece about you, and realizing that, women outnumber men here in the United States by a couple million. It's important that, you get votes from all areas, all demographics, especially women, because women are going to be the ones truly like examining you up and down. Whereas to men, it's like an eye-to-eye face contact. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So.
And I also think, so you guys and I talked about this for the longest time. There was this book that I was reading, and it really delved into language and the way we utilize language in order to build connection and build community. It's called cultish. Now, I know you hear the name cultish. It's not talking, it does talk about like cults and how like cults are made, but it also talks about how like language shapes our society and the way that we utilize language to build connections and how we get people to believe in what we believe. So my job, I predominantly am like a communications expert, but the predominant thing that I do is I learn how to appeal to your emotion through stories. Erica, what you just did is you told a story about how someone made you feel.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes what you're doing is that I think that too breeds into why other people select. So we can see somebody get on TV and tell, like, do their whole speech and everything. But for me to hear from you to say like, yeah, this person did this for me and they went and picked up the umbrella and this is how they made me feel. They're building a trust. And because I know you, then I build this weird emotional, kind of how Keelan said, this emotional pill, this trust to them. And that's through a secondhand story that you told me. So it's super interesting to hear you say that, because there are people who, before they, I guess you could talk about it in like terms of identity. There's individualistic identity and collective identity, which individualistic is like me, myself, and how society can help me. Collective is everyone together, which is usually a Eastern Asian type of society. But with this collective identity, a lot of times we do things secondhand. So I know that you like it, so then I want to do it. A prime example, Alexa. Erica went and she bought all these Alexas and all of a sudden now I want an Alexa and Keelan wants an Alexa, because we have these conversations and we're getting this secondhand knowledge from somebody else
about how it worked for them.
And then now I want to go buy it and see how it works for me.
Right.
So I think too, that's how people tend to pick political candidates. Sometimes I'll go, like my sister-in-law, she's really good at like research. And sometimes I'll go and I will like look at political candidates or look at policies or things and get more information just because I've had a conversation with her. So that's another way I think that people kind of build that connection of why they want to vote or follow someone.
And I also think it's like you said, it's about storytelling, about building trust. And with storytelling, you like by you telling your story, as Tracy is an example, there is such a thing as the power of persuasion.
Yeah.
And when you said that, like if I'm sitting here talking to you, Erica, and all three of us do live in the area in which this fair was happening, and we did have an opportunity to vote for one of those candidates, just by listening to your interaction, and possibly if we were there having the same interaction, his body language or just his actions, not necessarily words that he speaks, but just through his actions, they have communicated through a severe power of persuasion that this might need to be the candidate, because this is someone who seems to be what we consider to be a servant of the state, or a servant of the county, or or whatever. And so the power of persuasion is real, and through politics is used all the time.
And I would love to see how that plays out like regionally. So like rural counties versus cities, southern states versus northern states. Because I oftentimes feel like in southern states, we have like a really big, like, this is my boy, this is my family, like this is my, and they appeal to that very mom and pop sense of being,
southern
like
charm.
Yeah, like that charm, that I want to be all about the people type feel. And I think that oftentimes is really big in southern states.
Yeah, and Tennessee is, a southern state, so I think it goes a lot into that good old boy. You have like this community. I know you, I've known your family, blah, blah, blah. And then you have a new person that comes in that might not necessarily be a prominent member of the community or whatever. But then I think it goes to, and a lot of times maybe in small towns, just like thinking about when I went to high school, like a lot of times people that have like a more prominent last name in the community might get more favors or might be known by more people than somebody who's not. So I think too, maybe those people that think they're prominent in the community are like, oh, well, I got this in the bag because everybody's known me for a long time. And then you have this other person that comes in and does more in terms of like interacting with the people and like does more like physical type things, that I think can go a long way. But that leads us to the next thing about, which I think is kind of political too, because I feel like it's mostly major cities, but there's this whole thing going on now, or has been going on, but I just recently read an article about it, which is why we're discussing it, because it came into my brain. This idea of anti-homeless architecture. And I think it's predominant in larger cities. I don't know if I've personally seen any in Nashville. Not that I'm going downtown Nashville as often as I was in college, but I think in larger cities like New York, Colorado, that kind of thing, it's maybe more prominent. And I know, Teresa, you said you had some experience with it, so I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so I was going to try to show a picture, but I can't seem to pull it up, but that's okay.
Yeah, y'all can Google anti-homeless architecture and you'll be able to see it.
Yeah. And so anti-homeless architecture, when you brought it up, I brought it up because when my family lives in like I would call it the Southwest. So they live in like Colorado, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona. And that's where I'm originally, like that's the area that I'm from. And so when you brought it up, it was very interesting because me and Jacob had an experience when we visited Denver, Colorado. Like I want to say it was like 3 or 4 years ago. And it was right at the peak of when they were having like a lot of homeless people coming into the city. And so we had started to notice, like when I was there, a lot of things like them designing bathrooms where you have to go into the store in order to get the lock key, or they had the benches with like, or not the benches, but like kind of little platforms with the little spikes on them, or designing the benches that you could only like sit one at a time and had like these little blockades. Mm-hmm. And so when Erica's talking about this anti-homeless, or it's also known as the defensive design or hostile architecture, pretty much it's architectures or things that are created in order to keep pretty much what people feel like is to push homeless people or marginalized communities from staying within those areas.
Yeah, so like a bench that might have
barriers. Yeah, if you have a bench that has barriers, you can't lay down on it. If you have like a little street thing that has spikes on it, you can't sleep there or sit there for too long. If you have locks in the bathroom, you can't stay in the bathroom area. And traditionally, if you go and research, there are a lot of cities and issues with not having enough public bathrooms. So, yeah.
I think also, though, for everything that you believe that you have a solution to, like, you know, one thing is, you know, we don't want our homeless on the street. We don't want them to have them sleeping on benches or in parks and stuff like that. We want them to be able to rise in society. We want them to, if they, you know, for any reason they can't do those things for themselves, we want them to be able to go to a shelter that's designed for that purpose. However, not all shelters do things correctly to make sure that people have the things that they need.
Right.
And so when you do stuff like that, when you create architecture that's meant to harm the homeless community and try to break them per se, there will always be a way that they will find to make it work.
Yeah.
You know, you create benches that have separations between them. Okay, we'll do something that can make us a platform to where we can make it even so we can stay on it. Oh, you don't want to, you want to put spikes on certain fixtures. Okay, well, we'll find something that will cushion those spikes so that we can lay on top. And let me tell you, you want to find creative people? Homeless people are creative people. They will find any and everything and make you look crazy because you thought you did something that was going to keep them out. And they were like, psych, got you.
Yeah.
Psych, got you. No, for real though. And just what makes it so interesting about like how what Keelan's saying is like, gotcha. And what makes this defensive architecture, this anti-homeless architecture so devastating to this community is that they have gone and said like, oh, we did this because of the fact that we want to stop crime and lower crime rates. So what they've done is created a pretty much created a conversation where a correlation between crime and being homeless.
Right.
And so now you're already stigmatized for living outside. You know, people may think that you're lazy or that you're not trying, or just all these different stigmas that already come with being homelessness. Now you're being labeled as a criminal when that is not always the case. And due to statistics, majority of the times is not the case at all.
Right. And many homeless people have mental health problems. So really they need help mental health wise, and they need assistance other than this anti-homeless architecture. But for me, it gives me the idea. I was watching this show the other day, and in the show, there was this like big prominent figure coming to the community, and they did this homeless roundup where they went around and they got all the homeless people that were like sleeping under bridges and doing this, and they took them to shelters because they didn't want this prominent community person to come in and see that they have a homeless problem. And I think that happens like in real cities too. Like this was a show, but you know, a lot of times TV shows are based on real events. So I think this happens in real societies too. And to me, it's like you have the means and then the funds or whatever to be able to do these homeless roundups and take these homeless people to the communities, shelters, but you're not supporting the community shelters. Like shelters can only handle so many people and only have the resources to support so many people. And like you said, not all shelters are even good shelters that actually like are helping the individual. They're just getting funding or whatever and not actually putting it towards what it's supposed to be. So it's like, for me, to me, I'm torn because I want the homeless people to not be sleeping on the street. I want them to be able to sleep in a shelter or get assistance. But then my human heart is like, why are you putting spikes on a bench when somebody has nothing and you're literally not going to let them sleep on this bench?
Yeah.
And then what we see with like the correlation between homelessness and crime is that, and I'm actually teaching crime to my sociology class right now, is there is a huge correlation between the two. But typically homeless people who commit crimes are not committing, you know, serious crimes. They're committing petty crimes, things that allow them to receive jail time because they know once they do go to jail, they have somewhere to sleep. They have, you know, a certain amount of meals a day. They know they have a certain amount of free time. And if they're already feeling captive in society, just being, you know, just the thing is, they know that they have security.
Yeah. I read an article
like that, but they know that they have security and they know that they're getting the basic necessities that they need, especially if they are young and homeless, especially if they are people who are single and homeless, because those are the two biggest groups that tend to commit these petty crimes. But those who have families or those who have children tend not to do those things, but they choose the route of, you know, choosing to beg on street corners and stuff like that. You know, however, you know, depending on where you are, panhandling can be a petty crime. So, you know.
Well, yeah, I read this article once about this woman who like robbed this store, but specifically did it because she knew she wanted to be arrested and like was waiting there for the police to arrest her because she needed some kind of like dental something, or she had some crazy medical thing going on. And she knew once she got arrested that the facility, the prison or whatever that she was going to be staying at had to provide her these services, which goes to a whole other conversation that we don't even have time to get into about healthcare. But I feel like sometimes homeless people are committing these crimes because they know they're going to get quote unquote help if they do. And a lot of the crimes that they're committing are like petty theft or trespassing or whatever. And sometimes they're getting arrested for crimes they don't even realize they're committing. Like sometimes they get arrested for trespassing and it's like, well, I didn't know I couldn't sleep here, or I didn't know I couldn't lay here. There's not like a sign that says you can't. I don't know. I just think it's a whole, for me, from a human standpoint, I'm like, let people sleep where they want. As if they're not harming me, then it doesn't matter. But I guess for like city officials and like other people in the statistics, they're like, well, we can't just let people sleep where they want.
Yeah. And it's, that's what one of the articles I was reading is that there's just kind of like this where there's this pressure from like this pressure on city officials and businesses to keep public areas essentially clean. And so that's why they're going this route. So it's like almost a double-edged sword, where you, as your job, you're required to keep this, but then it's affecting a population who oftentimes has no real control over the homelessness that they face.
Right.
So it's devastating. But it's also devastating to realize that you walk past some of these architectures or you see something and you're like, oh my God, that is so beautiful. And underhanded it's designed to keep people away. You know what I'm saying?
I know.
It does.
Well, I was like,
it looks really good. And you're like, oh, that's
beautiful.
And then you're like, wait, that was created in a way to keep people out of this area.
Yeah. And some of the pictures I was looking at, I was like, wow, that is a really cool design. And then you look at it and it's like, oh, that's intended to hurt somebody. And it's like, what the heck?
That is intended to keep you away.
Yeah.
We encourage all of our people who are watching. Oh, it's so weird to say watching and listening, especially when it comes to homeless shelters. Please donate, whether that's your time, money, or if you're able to go out and buy things that homeless shelters need. Please go online, find your local homeless shelter, animal shelter, any type of shelter that provides any type of assistance to the public. Just go out and donate your time, money, products, whatever it can be, so that you yourself can make a difference in your own community.
Yes. So thank you all so much for listening to this week's broadcast. We are so excited to have you. Please don't forget to subscribe on your favorite platform, and to follow us on Facebook. We have an Instagram channel. We need to get better at that. And just again, we thank you so much for being here, and you have a wonderful day. Bye, guys.
Welcome to the latest episode of Making Sense.